Now in this video, I'm going to show you how to paint a tree similar to the previous trees that we've painted, but this one is going to use, again, very bright, contrasting colors, and I'm going to take inspiration from a chestnut or a baobab tree, and we're going to create a very thick trunk, and we're going to use very sparse foliage. And I'm also going to show you how to create a brush based on the leaves that we created in the previous video. Now, selecting a nice bright baby blue color with my medium-sized brush, I'm going to start painting in the trunk and branches. Just keep it very loose, and again, we're going to use our eraser to erase out and give it those nice edges. Again, be sure to erase out the ends of the branches so that they have a tapered look. Now on a new layer, making sure that the multiply filter is on, we're going to add some shadow to our tree trunk and branches. Using the big brush again, we're going to erase it out as we go. Just keep it nice and loose. We're going to create shadow at the bottom of the branches and then kind of just going down the trunk. I want to start adding in some texture to my tree bark. Let's lower the opacity a little so that the shadow isn't so strong. Now with my texture brush, I'm going to erase out the edges and just slowly start adding in some definition and kind of sharpening up that shadow line. And now with the thin angled eraser brush, I'm going to start adding in some texture to my tree bark. We're going to keep this very fantasy again and just loosely erase out these lines, just so that it, has that really cool effect. And I'm kind of curving around and contouring to the shape of the tree. Instantly, this kind of tricks our eyes into, believing that this is a trunk just by using simple techniques like this. And of course, let's add a little texture to the branches on top as well. Now let's go back to those leaves that we created in our first video. I'm going to use one of these leaves to create a brush, and we're going to use that brush to kind of paint in our texture to our leaves. This is another technique and a way of creating trees. I'm going to decide on which leaf to pick on. I think I'm just going to pick the basic leaf on the left. And now, holding down Command or Control on our keyboard, I'll select the leaf layer, and then on a new layer, I'm going to fill it in with my paint bucket tool and color it entirely in black. And I'm just going to erase out all the other leaves and just get rid of the stem as well. Then I want you to go to Edit, Define Brush Preset, and you can name it whatever you want. And then if you open up your brush presets and look at the bottom, you can see our leaf brush has been created. And it is along with all the other default Photoshop brushes. And now we're going to use that to kind of add in some texture to our leaves. And now on a new layer, let's select the brush. We'll even out the spacing, select your scattering turn on your shape dynamics, and you can adjust all these settings to decide how you want and how many brushes, how many leaves you want in your brush. Also, in your shape dynamics, you can adjust the angle jitter so that your brush can have different directions to it. That way your leaves don't all point in one direction. This is a really cool feature. I love using this all the time. With a nice deep orange on a new layer, I'm going to start painting in a very rough outline of where I think my leaves should go. I've turned on my dual brush so I keep that cool painterly scratchy feel like I had on my trunk, and it kind of stays on the leaves. And I'm just going to loosely, and lightly create an outline of the tree. Again, I'm taking inspiration from a chestnut or a birch and just kind of, keeping it very loose and scattered around my tree. Make sure that the leaves are behind the tree branch. While hiding my gray layer, I'm just going to paint in those transparent parts while my white background is there. And now let's hide it again. Just want to keep doing this, on and off, because sometimes it's very hard to see with the gray background. And now I want to start adding in my highlight. So with the same brush but much lighter orange and on a new layer, I'm going to start creating a very light scatter of leaves around the top. Remember that our shadow will always be at the bottom and the lightest leaves will always be on the top. And now, of course, on a new layer, let's start adding in the shadow. We use a similar process to the one that we did with the highlight, but this time we're going to keep the darker leaves at the bottom, just wherever you think the shadow would be, right? It would be all the way at the bottom, the part that gets the least amount of light. And now on a new layer, let's add in some even brighter highlights. Just this layering process has really just given our tree so much definition, and it really pops and feels very bright and perfect for the spring season. I feel like my leaves have so much definition and detail to them that I want to add a little bit more of that to the trunk. So on a new layer, multiply layer, I'm going to just use a medium-sized brush and just start adding in some shadow just to the parts which I think would be darker. This instantly gives my trunk a lot more depth and dimension. And now let's add in some shadow, kind of going down the main part of the trunk. This is really going to bring the tree together. And I'm going to take my very big brush without any dual brush on and make sure that it's completely feathered. And I'm going to start adding in some more dark shadows to my tree, and of course again erasing them out as I see fit. Now let's hide the gray just to see how it looks. I like to zoom out often just to make sure that the silhouette is reading clearly as well. I do this often, sometimes when you paint on a big canvas it's very hard to see it as the bigger picture, so zooming out often is a good habit. Just want to break up the shape right there with a nice strong highlight. This is really, you know, kind of coming together now. I'm very happy with it. And that's it. Once I finish with these few details, we are done with painting this tree. And in our final video, the next one, I'm going to do a similar tree, but we're going to add in a little more detail. I'm going to show you again how to use and create your brushes, and we're going to add a little more, you know, lighting to our tree and just a few more details. It's going to be a similar technique, but just a little different.